I was sat in the scariest chair in the world. The dentist chair. The dentist towered above me. Mr. Bamforth, I'm not going to lie. This is going to hurt. But you are completely in control. If at any moment you want me to stop, just say stop and I'll stop. Well, what choice did I have? Okay. He puts me back in his fancy dentist chair. Zzz, open wide. He starts to pull up my tooth. And as he pulls, the pain builds. And he pulls, the pain builds. And he pulls and, stop! Without missing a beat, the dentist said, almost there. Continues pulling up the tooth. I don't know about you, but that's pretty much how I feel in this pandemic right now. And as a leader, how do you refocus, re-energize, reconnect your teams in this sort of environment? Well, it's tough. But the answer is you get back to basics. Now, before we prescribe the solution, let's make sure we really understand what the problem is. So let's take an everyday example. Let's take Zach. So Zach was pursuing his goals, living out his dream of studying at Cambridge University, which, okay, is not too everyday for the majority of us, but the principle's exactly the same. As he was pursuing what mattered to him, all of a sudden he was thrown out, along with all the other students, all the other staff. Cambridge shut its doors for the pandemic, and his whole world was turned upside down. And if that wasn't scary enough, now I had to make his way home on public transport, which, especially at the start of start of a pandemic, is pretty scary too, isn't it? You're just desperately trying to stay away from everyone. Thankfully, Zach managed to get home safe and sound, and he promptly hid away from the world. Of course he did. That's what he's meant to do in a pandemic, isn't he? Now, we're going to come back to Zach later. But let's be honest, you and I. It's not just pandemics we love to hide from, is it? It's all of our nightmares. All of our nightmares. And that's actually fine and healthy for a time. The problem comes when we hide from our nightmares for a sustained amount of time. It gets really damaging. And I work with teams to help them deal with change, to help them become a bit better, to help them become their best selves. And it turns out, to enable that, each of us need 4 conditions that really enable us to thrive. First off, we need to feel like we've got control of our environment. Second, we need to feel competent. We need to feel skilled at what we're trying to achieve. Third, we need to feel like what we're trying to achieve has value. We need to have a purpose, a vision, if you will. Fourth, we need to feel like we have meaningful social connections. Now, why has the pandemic affected us so badly? Well, it's attacked all of those, hasn't it, for a sustained amount of time. So as we start to come out of the pandemic, what can you do as a leader to help your team regain their confidence, regain these conditions to enable them to thrive? Well, I've got one suggestion. Have a post-pandemic project that your teams can own, that remind them how skilled they are, that, again, re-excite them and give them a bit of a purpose to achieve something of value, and that rebind them together again as a team. Now, I'm not going to tell you exactly what that post-pandemic project should be. That's between you and your teams. But what I am going to say is there are a couple of things it needs in order for it to have the benefit for your team that we need. First off, it needs to have a vision. It needs to have a vision. Visions are so incredibly important to teams to enable them to bind together and to achieve something of value. Of course, you need to have that focus, don't you? But, well, I mean, we're great at visions in business, aren't we? We see them at the top of our business. We see them in our departments, at our projects, and this project is no different. Your post-pandemic project absolutely needs to have a vision. Now, I've been on a bit of a journey. I've been on a journey to find out the greatest visions, those visions that actually matter, that make the difference to us. And I've found the greatest vision. I'm going to share it with you, but you best be sat down because you're going to be blown away. It's absolutely amazing. You ready? I've got a little bit of confession to make. I lied to you. This isn't the greatest vision, is it? This is an example of the worst type of vision. The worst type of vision. Sadly, we see these far too often in business, and I'm just not sure who they're for. I'm just not sure what we're trying to achieve by writing them. They're just not very motivating. Then a vision needs to be visual. You need to be able to literally, a vision, it needs to be something you can visualize that pulls you forward, that you're trying to bring about, that matters. This isn't really that. Let me show you a vision that is a vision that I think is absolutely phenomenal. This is a cave painting, for goodness sake, from 15,000 years ago, from the cave of Altamira, and yet, you look at that. I know you feel sorry for the elephant, but you look at that, immediately you understand the purpose of teamwork. Immediately understand what the vision is. You understand that your role in that team matters, because if you don't deliver, perhaps one of your team members are going to get trampled to death and they're not going to come home. But if you complete this, pardon the pun, mammoth task, you come home as heroes. And perhaps it's the difference between your tribe surviving the winter or not. That's the vision. That's the vision. So as you work with your teams to find out what's the vision for your post-pandemic project that's going to be the thing that absolutely excites them, absolutely brings us together again, you need to consider, how are you going to give that vision to your team? How are you going to bring them along? Now, there are two ways to try and do that coincide with the two principles of what, or two ideas of what leadership is. I'm going to tell you that through two stories with two leaders I've worked with. So first off, Alex. So Alex, I really liked her as a leader, and she invited me to work with her team to help them get to the next level. So I went along to her office, I knocked on the door. Alex opened the door and said, "Come on, Leon, thanks so much for coming." And we discussed about how we could improve her team, what could be put in place to help her team just really up their game. And we came up with a plan, and I was really excited for the plan. And Alex said to me, "Leon, this is perfect. This is absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for coming today. This is brilliant." And I shook Alex's hand, and I felt pretty amazing. And I walked away from her office, and behind me, I heard Alex say, "Now my team will have to do it my way." Have to. When everything changed in a second, it wasn't going to work. And it didn't work, because that approach to leadership is just not helpful. See, Alex felt that her role was to be responsible for the team's success. Let me tell you a different approach that works much better. So I worked with a different leader called Lucy. Now, Lucy felt her role was to be responsible for the conditions to enable the team to succeed. Subtle difference, but completely different approach to how you actually implement the leadership. So once again, I was invited by Lucy to work with her and her team to help them improve. Once again, I knocked on Lucy's door, and Lucy opened it and said, "Leon, thanks so much for coming, come on in. We're all waiting for you." And I sat down and I said, "As you know, I've worked with each and every one of you and listened to you and found out about your struggles and your frustrations. And, well, this is what you've told me. What do you want to do about it?" And interestingly, we allowed the team to discuss. And one of the women on the team was called Lucia, separate to team leader Lucy. But Lucia looked at the problems that we'd put forward and she said, "Why are we doing that? If we took that and flipped it on its head, we'd transform this team." I said, "Well, what do you think, everyone? Is this what you want to do?" And everyone said, yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. It's interesting, isn't it? How easy it is to get people to implement their own ideas, right? Rather than your ones. So I left the team to it. I left team leader Lucy to it, and I went away. 3 weeks later, I knocked once again on that office door. And again, Lucy opened up and said, "Come in, Leon, we're all waiting for you." And I sat down and I said, "Thanks so much for inviting me back. How has it gone?" And one of the team members said, "Leon, I cannot tell you how transformed the team has been. It's been absolutely amazing. Your idea was genius." My idea? I looked at Lucy out of the corner of my Lucia, sorry, whose idea it was, out of the corner of my eye, and she went, "Of course you did. You would have done, and I would have done. I hate it when people take credit for our ideas." I said, no, it wasn't my idea. It was Lucia's idea. Well done, Lucia. And she said, thanks. Now, what would have happened if I had taken credit, or team leader Lucy had taken credit for Lucia's idea? Well, you and I know Lucia would have resented it. It wouldn't have brought the team together. It wouldn't have done what we wanted it to do ultimately. It would have fizzled out. So as a leader, if you don't get to take credit for your team's success, what credit do you get? Well, I came back to that same office a couple of months later, and again I knocked on that door, and again Lucy opened it, invited me in, but this time it was just Lucy and I. And I said, "Lucy, thanks so much for inviting me back. How's it gone?" And she said, "Leon, I can't tell you how difficult this last couple of months have been. You know, the workload has just ramped up and up and up, and we've lost a team member, and the team have absolutely thrived. We've absolutely thrived. If we hadn't have made that change, I don't know how we'd have survived." I don't know about you, but that sounds like success to me. I loved working with that team. As you have a post-pandemic project, it can be great for you, it can be great for your team, it can be great for your customers, and you can make the world a little bit of a better place. And don't we need that right now? Let's go back to Zach. If you remember, we left Zach hiding away from the pandemic. Now, Zach hid away for 18 months in 1665, 350 years ago. See, his pandemic was the bubonic plague. And Zach thrived during the pandemic. He absolutely thrived because he had a pandemic project. And at the end of his pandemic, he gave us the theory of gravity, the 3 laws of motion. He was, of course, Sir Isaac Newton. He gave us massively more control of our environment. But let's just look at how did he thrive during his pandemic? Well, did he have control of his environment? Well, with this project, he absolutely did. Did he have skill at what he was doing? Well, he wasn't just cowering, hiding away at home. Yeah, he really had skill at the project that he was working on. Did he have a purpose, a vision? He absolutely did. He absolutely did. And finally, did he have meaningful social connection? It's interesting because Sir Isaac said, "The only reason I've been able to see further is by standing on the shoulders of giants." Now, we've got an awful lot of problems, haven't we, coming out of this pandemic? The world's in quite a lot of disarray. We've got a lot of problems to solve. So who are the giants whose shoulders we're going to stand on to get out of this? Well, it's us, isn't it? It's our time. So who are the giants whose shoulders your customers are going to stand on to get out of this? Well, that's your team, isn't it? So who is the giant whose shoulders your team are going to stand on to get out of this? You're right. You're absolutely right. It's you. Go be their giant.